Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. Read your Rosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, Educator spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. Come rock with me and get down to this new jam. Reaching out to my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out. Salafalava and welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. On today's show, we have a certified introvert. She is a regular short story contributor to Guam publications, and occasionally she blogs as Guam Goddess in Training. She is of Chamorro and Korean descent and a woman of the Moana. It is my honor to introduce to the show Pacific Island author and educator, Tanya Taimanglo. How are you, Tanya?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, but back to how are you? I mean, school's just wrapped up. How are you in holiday mode at the moment, or are you kind of still trying to get
I'm
out
still
of
waking
teacher
up at
mode?
6:30, so I'm still in kind of teacher mode, even if I go to sleep late. But that's gonna even out here soon. I'm sure. I'm glad it's over. We just ended 2 days ago, so.
Man, what a champ. Yeah, give it up to all the educators who have wrapped up as of a few weeks ago, but just and also still, wrapping up the end of the school year. It has been a tough one, that I must say.
Yes, with COVID being scary to it being to kids just, it's been every emotion and every restriction.
Because you're a teacher at a middle school.
Middle school,
So
6th grade.
were
Yeah.
you kind of like back in full force at the beginning of
Yes.
the school year? Or were you still kind of online?
The weird, different hybrid virtual then back in person was all last school year, and we thought that was tough because we did 7 months online, which you're talking to a bunch of black boxes mostly on Zoom,
Right.
asking them, begging them to say something, pay attention, type this weird word in the chat if you are hearing me, to schools opening in April, and then people saying, well, what's the point? And then so we went with that year, and we thought, as educators, we were like, yeah, that was really hard. But then we went to this year where everything was just full fledged. We were also kind of scared with, COVID being, the infection rates being pretty high and opening to 34 kids in a classroom. And wondering how do we do 3 feet social distancing, which was the rule, keeping their mouth. It was a lot of your nose, cover that nose, to 6-7 months later when the mask restriction was lifted. So it was everything, and knock on wood, we survived, and the kids, I think the goal was to have them thrive, but there's definitely a lot of social growth that needs to be repaired with many of our kids. They came in still being that elementary heart and mind in 11-year-old puberty ridden bodies, so we saw a lot of behaviors. So sometimes we had to pause the content and then work on the person.
Oh, absolutely. The whole social emotional factor, like I mean, we've been in like our school is K-12 and we've been back like full force, and it's scary. Like we still, like even nearing the end of the year, I mean, we still had students really struggling, even like even teachers themselves, colleagues just worried, and there's just always that fear, but we're just like we're carrying on like everything's like normal. And I also had many students, like even some of my seniors who have recently graduated, who are just really struggling, because they would only leave the house to come to school and then straight back home, and just I think being stuck in that room only to come out and go to school was really tough on a lot of our kids. And I think as educators, it was so easy to just forget about that, right? And just kind of like carry on, right? Back to testing, back to, assignments and all that, and forgetting, hello, we're still trying to live through COVID,
And some of these kids have experienced death in their family, or, even some of our coworkers have had a rough go with COVID in general and getting it themselves. So, and just, I don't even get into the politics, but the different ideals we have and the different, some of the misconceptions the kids bring from home into the classroom where I have to take a pause and educate them like, well, that's not actually true, or this is what, without stepping on parents' beliefs and stuff. It's a fine line as an educator to want to address, I guess, anything that's harmful and misleading and redirect in a loving way. You're not like, hey, you can't be spreading that. So, they are 11 and 12, and they're in that spot where they're coming from an elementary cutesy phase to wanting to buck the system. So they kind of need sometimes a light hand and sometimes tougher love, I guess.
Yeah. Since we're talking about teaching, since we've just started on it, I wanted to know how have you been coping? Because we do, student centered, everything, our students are so important to us. But for you personally, having a family, having your own kids, how have you been able to cope through this time?
I think what helped me was my daughter was an 8th grader. She just finished. So she's going to high school and beyond without me. So she's been there through all that rough patch. She started 6th grade with me when I started as a librarian, dream job for a little bit. So she always recruited other 6th graders at the time into the library. And then COVID hit in March of her 6th grade year. And then 7th grade was just this blur of different things online. So coping with my daughter there was special, and my husband and my son. But then having a common core of teachers where we could commiserate and discuss and vent, that was very helpful, definitely. So teacher friends are friends to the end. So that was very helpful. Comparing notes with my brothers. So one of my brothers is an art teacher in Guam, Sonny. Finding out what's going on the island, because Guam is so tiny, and if COVID really got out of hand there, that would be very devastating to our island. So I remember the first time, because Washington had the first case in the States, he immediately was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, that's somewhere random. I don't even know where that retirement or that facility is. It'll be fine. But he was really worried, and then I became worried for them. So they've had their own issues. So family for sure, and friends definitely. I'll say a lot of chocolate cake as well.
Yay to the chocolate cake! No judgments on this end. Man, so let's talk a little. I will come back to teacher life because I feel like we could talk about it for a long time. I wanted to touch on your identity, your Chamorro and Korean roots. Like growing up, did you have the best of both worlds? Tell us
my
about
parents
that.
tried. So they tried. My dad was in the Army, as many Pacific Islanders are. Guam being a territory, that's a whole other argument. Colonization it does a lot to a people, and although we are grateful, I think our culture has. I don't even speak the native tongue, which is horrible. I don't even speak my native Korean language. I know certain phrases, certain words. I could probably ask where the bathroom is and ask for food and say I love you and maybe curse you out. But but having a meaningful conversation is tough. So with my dad being in the Army, I mean, he was a 6-foot tall Pacific Islander, dark skin, menacing dude. When he went to Korea, I mean, he fell in love with this tiny little Korean lady. They had to hire a young, and I wrote about it, and it comes through in some of my stories. But they hired a little 7-8-year-old who spoke English for their first date, and I always thought, oh, my parents have a really rebellious, romantic story. So I was born in Korea. We moved to Massachusetts. A lot of that was my toddler years. My brothers were born in Massachusetts, and then he's like, I don't want to drag my family all over. I'm going to raise them in Guam because I want my kids to have that cultural upbringing. But it was tough because my face is not truly Chamorro. if you're judging. And Chamorros can look like all kinds of stuff because of Spanish and different descent. And I do, when I meet Filipinos, I do declare, I said, hey, my great grandfather is Filipino because otherwise, because they always start strong with Tagalog with me, and I go, I'm sorry, I don't speak Tagalog. I am
Like,
part Filipino.
stop.
Yeah, that's fine. But growing up, it was, I mean, there was a point where I hid my Korean side, which shames me now. But my middle initial is K, which stands for K, and Kong is my mom's maiden name. And I remember in elementary, there's a very like strong, deep-seated resentment towards the Japanese, again with brutality and colonization. So I just remember young Chamorro girls saying, "Don't play with Tanya. She's the Japanese, right?" And it used to be this dirty thing. And I go, "What? I didn't know." So I asked my dad one day. I was like, "Why do people keep calling me Japanese, and why is that bad?" And he's like, "Oh, because the war." And that's as far as he would go. The war, and they were bad to us. So they're probably hearing from their grandparents that trickle down resentment. So I used to say, "Oh yeah, my middle name's Kim," for like Kimberly. Total lie. And I used to get scared that I'd be struck down. But oh my God, like, why are you lying? And but my mother's my workaround was, my loophole was, my mother's maiden middle name was Kim. So like, I'm not totally in our family somewhere. So that was always a tough part for me, just not being Chamorro enough on an island. And I remember even with family members, my dad would have to defend us a lot with making sure everyone brought us into the fold, because they would exclude us from things. Which is tough to say. I love my family and everything, but when you're not 100% of something, they treat you as less. So when I do explain to people, "Hey, I'm half Chamorro, half Korean," it's tough because someone says, "Well, you're a Korean, and you're also a Chamorro, so you're all of those things in one." So that's what I try to impart on my own kids. And once in a while, growing up in Washington, amongst being definitely more of a minority here than they would in Guam, I always say, "Hey, are you getting any negative, comments from?" And they've been pretty shielded. If anything, because of K-pop, some of the kids are like, "Hey, you're part Korean. That's cool." But I'm kind of glad that they don't feel that resentment on the regular that I was raised with. And my brothers also had kind of similar, because we all kind of look blended. And growing up, and we still, I don't know. It's tough with the culture, and it bleeds into some of my writing, some of that stuff that I feel. So I work with it.
Since you mentioned your writing, because you are an author, your short stories, Attitude 13, a homage to your parents. And so as you were talking then, with those short stories, which of those kind of really, I mean, I suppose all of them straight, real deep from within, but I wonder, which of those especially, like as you just shared in terms of your culture and fitting in, like,
I think the biggest one, so this book is like 12 years old, back when like Amazon didn't have the self-publishing option. So I had to go hunting for Author House, and I was like, "Hun, just trust me. Can I have $1,000?" And we were just this like struggling Navy family. I didn't work. Just give me $1,000 so I can get this published. And I think the biggest one that kind of has the most of me in it would be By Any Other Name. And it's just a young girl who goes off to college to get away from an overbearing grandmother, who she happens to be named after. So that one, I think, is the one that I maybe was most mindful of, and added the most of myself.
What was response from like your brothers, or just family? Like, do they read your writing?
I always get awkward around anyone who reads my book, anything I've written, because that's just, I don't know why. Um, it's like, because when you write, it's like you're naked. And that's how I equate it. It's
Mm.
like you've shown some true face of yours and now they want to talk about it. And I'm just like, I don't want to talk about it. I want you to enjoy what you want to enjoy from it. Thank you for
Mm.
supporting me. But I get awkward around, um, because most times, like if it's family, I've had relatives say, "Hey, is this about you? Is this your life story?" Especially with Secret Shopper, and that's a
Yeah.
rom com. Like, no, I didn't divorce my husband and fall for some random Spanish guy. No. So, but my brother, what I'm proud of about with Attitude 13 especially is that's his artwork. This is Sonny's artwork.
And he also
His
illustrated your
job.
picture book, which is,
Yeah.
and I heard you mention earlier. Thank you for bringing that up because
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier he's an art teacher, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's the brother. That's the brother
Yeah.
that
That's the
illustrated.
brother. Yeah. With
That's
the
awesome.
complicated last name I made, Sonny Chargualaf. So, I mean, he's an art teacher, but his heart, like, sort of like I'm an English teacher, my heart is with writing, and his is with art. So he
Mm.
goes by. I'm going to do a shameless plug. My brother's art, Instagram and social media is Heroes and Head Kicks because he and I also both share Taekwondo, which was kind of my dad's kind of catch-all for being Korean. He goes, as children, he's like, "You are all going to take Taekwondo because it's Korean." And I remember being 12, and just fresh to womanhood. I'm like, heck no, I'm not wearing that white uniform. I have things that
Yeah.
go on once a month, and that's not happening. So for 4 years, I fought my father on, but I went every night and watched my
Yeah.
two younger brothers. So he does heroes and head kicks, and so he kind of combines MMA, his love of martial arts, and his love of comic books
Mm.
into art. So he was a natural fit because my dad had passed away, I, and this was I was like, we need to get our legends into book format. They had happened before in like compilations, but they weren't always written by an indigenous person of that
Mm.
culture. It was always like some professor or some outsider, which kind of irked me. Before that, it was just passed down orally, and so
Right.
I said, I'm just going to give you the words for Serena. You draw whatever you want, and he kind of went with the comic book flair. I said,
Mm.
all I ask is you not make her too sexy. Which, um, I don't know. She's a little bit sexy, but um, it was very cool to get both of these done. They were both done in 2010 around the same time within a month of each other. So that was two
Mm.
grand that I had to ask my husband for. It's like, hey, give me 2 grand to get these published. But having that project together to honor our dad who had passed away,
Mm.
super meaningful, if anything. And that's the proudest thing about both those, Attitude 13 and Serena. So I do want to try for an Attitude 13 volume 2, but
Exciting.
yeah. So I've started. It's been maybe 5 years. I keep saying it, but I do have stories that have already been
Mm.
working on and formatted. And then every time someone says, "Hey, can you contribute a short story?" or "Hey, what are you working on?" then I'll take from that and I
Right.
go, "Here's one," and so that kind of puts that again on hold. But I would like another volume because I feel like I'm different 12,
Yeah.
12 years later, and the stories might come out a little different for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because yeah, that was a while ago, but
Yeah.
how have you changed as a writer? Like if you think about your creative process and where have you seen growth? Or
Hmm.
where have you kind of changed your style of writing?
I think I I think the first, so the two books I did and then Secret Shopper, which sometimes I'll have a sixth grader say, "I Googled you." I'm like, "Don't do that." They go, "Which book?" One kid goes, "Which book should I order?" I said, "None of them. You don't have to." Again, self promotion, not very good. They go, "Why?" Well, one of them's not for your level. And then they, of course, get more curious.
Mm.
But like with Secret Shopper, my mom was still alive when I was writing it. And having that language barrier, um,
Mm.
when I would write, I write late at night when my daughter was born. So I would stay up for 2 hours, 10 to 12 to 1 a.m., just getting things down. And then I would give her like, it's almost like a K-drama where in the morning I tell her, so this is happening in the chapter. And then she'd give me her feedback. Oh, that sounds exciting. Or why do they have to kiss? You know, because she was so like, you don't need to talk about all of that. She's very, very, I guess, I don't know what the term is, just more innocent and wanted things to be cutesy. But it was, those 3 books were kind of, I want to say frantic and just a creative typhoon of things that just kind of came out. Like when authors sometimes say, I don't know what came over me, it was like someone else was writing. That's definitely that. And I think with everything else I've written since then, it's been more thoughtful. Like I've had to stop and say, well, why would, like, and maybe I'm getting in the way of myself. Well, what would motivate that? Why would that happen? And then also try to have reverse engineering in a story, like what's my end product and how do I build up to that? Like, but sometimes there's good and bad with that. Like, I really want to teach something, or I just want to just put it out there and let people figure it out? It's really tough with writing. So,
you know, I love that you mentioned your students Googling you, with, you know, in terms of books. And so as an author, author, educator in the classroom. What if I was a fly on the wall?
Yeah.
What would I be hearing or seeing?
You would see me break into a lot of impromptu ad-libbing and song, especially when they in a comical way. So even though I'm an introvert, I come home spent because I've been around. It's too people-y, right? So I come home and I just sit and I'm like, because I'm that teacher that will not sit down through the whole class. And I have 5 periods. I have 3 ELA, had 2 electives. And I feel like students will take advantage of you if you're the one who sits in the back, says, here's your work, get going. You have to kind of walk. You have to patrol the classroom and you have to make sure they're on task, because you will otherwise get kids on there, because everyone has a Chromebook in our school district. You'll have them gaming, you'll have them on videos, you'll have them everything but what they're required to do. So I'm very walking around, hey, tapping on their desk, like, let's go. Time, right? I always impress that there's no reason to fail my class, because I prop you guys up. I give you the time. If I see that it can't be done in a class period, I'm like, for your benefit, should we continue this tomorrow? And they're like, yes, we need more time. So you give them a voice in how their education's flowing. But I tend to get very comical. I have to know what they're into. One kid was singing some song by The Weeknd. He's like, right? And I go, save the weekend for the weekend. And he goes, so if you know what they're into, then I think there's an appreciation. They get a new schedule next year. So for FYI, I like you guys to be advocates for your education, to understand when things are due. And I want you to know that next year you get an extra 15 minutes, because class doesn't start at 8:15. We have a new schedule. We start at 8:30, and they're all cheering. So my daughter had this funny idea of adding, I don't know if you watch Stranger Things.
I know there's a new season coming out that all my students are talking about, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah. So I'm into it because I like it, but my daughter's very into it. So when I said, hey, here's my slide, I'm going to show them the new graphic for next school year, and I'll be talking about time. She goes, you should totally, I don't want to give you a spoiler, but she goes, you should totally put the sound bite from season 4, which is a clock. So I hid a little YouTube video in there, and then as I was talking, so you will be at 8:30. I pressed the little click on the thing, and then they hear this very scary clock sound, boom, and then kids perked up. They go, and they watch Stranger Things, so they're like, you hear that? And I go, hear what? What's going on? I pretended I didn't hear it. Started freaking out. They're like, I think the bad guy's coming, the villain's coming. I don't even want to say names for spoilers, but things like that. It's good for the kids. Sometimes I'll do a stupid dance, or I'll clap, or it's and to know what they're into, which is why TikTok is sucking a lot of my time. But
I was like, I got that request from you, and I was like, I was like, first of all, I saw your email. Oh, okay, now I'm going to create an Instagram account. So quick. All these posts. And I was like at school going, man, oh,
She's doing
wow,
it
she
right
was
now.
quick. Then I got the TikTok notification. I was like,
Yeah.
damn, she's really on a roll.
Well, I don't think I would have gone that fast if, I kind of wanted to prep for this because I want to be able, it's that, like I said, I'm not good at promoting myself, but once in a while something will come on Instagram, like when you posted something about me or when someone has read my book and they'll tag me and I'm like, I want to be able to attach the author part to that for sure. Because I don't want to have to worry about, well, who's seeing my personal stuff?
Right.
Who's seeing my author stuff? And I do like TikTok. I like the creative little videos and it's, I see why the kids are fond of it because it's really quick. And that's how you kind of have to teach too. You have to be like, you cannot drone on for 20 minutes because they shut down. So it's a lot of switching gears. Okay, now we're going to write. Now we're going to talk about this. Now we're going to watch a video. Now you're going to talk to your classmate. But I almost I told our building, our school, I said, we really need for teachers, some kind of social boot camp for them, like social media boot camp. You need to know what Discord means. You need to know what Snapchat is. Beginning of the school year, we had devious licks where kids were swiping things from sanitizer and stuff. And when a kid went up to one of the science teachers and says, "Can I lick your sanitizer?" She thought literally, she's thinking literal terms. I said, that just means he wants to steal it. And so things like that, you definitely need to keep in tune with the youth. At least on a certain level. You don't have to like what they're listening to or get into it yourself because there's a line where it gets, you're too old for that, and they'll say it. But definitely keeping in touch is important.
I love hearing my students talk about it. I watch I like going on TikTok to watch funny stuff or follow music trends. But I love hearing my students talk about it. But what I don't like is when they mention, oh, this, because there are also like educators who go out of their way to kind of like, it's like just enjoy it. You don't need to be, like what students do, what they do and post outside of school. That's their lives. Like, I don't know why you would go out of your way to, like,
to diss
stop
it or to,
just let them be. But I love, I always hear funny stories and from my students, and they love the dance trends. And I have a spoken word class for improv spoken word for summer school. And so last Friday we had like 20 minutes left of the lesson. It's our last session for the day, and then just turned into like a dance party. I was like DJ and a hype man, and they just got up and were doing all the dance trends, and I was just like going through the TikTok playlist, and it was cool, and I was just like, even my shy students who are, slowly coming out of this shell and spoken word, I mean, they were up there, and I was like, yo, okay, here's another side of students that you just rarely get to see unless they really
sometimes
trust.
it takes 9 months, sometimes it takes 6 months. And sometimes I won't have a kid volunteer to read. We were reading Dragon Wings by Lawrence Yep, which is an awesome book. And then Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis. And you have the usual kids, because I let them read the dialogue, but some kids will not. And I don't like forcing kids. I call, they have these things where you have equity sticks where you pick a stick, and if I call your name, you have to read. For 6th grade, that causes more anxiety and stress, I think, than anything. So I did away with that. And it's just the usual. But then sometimes I'll stop and I said, I know I get my usual 5 who like to read, but anyone else? And I usually give a lot of candy. I pay them with candy. But I think they realized the last 2 weeks, students were like, I've never read. So one girl goes, I'll do it. Perfect. It's just one line. You can do it. But even with the dancing, we do a lot of karaoke in my Asian American Pacific Islanders student union. They've elevated within the year from club to student union, which I'm very proud of. When we're done talking business and they're just sitting there like, agreed, it's 30 minutes of, can I draw on your whiteboard? And they just drawing Johnny Depp rules, and we love this person, and then karaoke. And it's usually Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, over and over, or Fantasy by Mariah Carey. And
wow.
and they just start singing and dancing, and it's good to have them feel safe enough to be funny in themselves. So I love it.
Mm. And I just want to repeat that again about so you actually you started there's an Asian
Yeah.
cultural club
Yep.
and a Pacific Islander
Yeah.
culture club at your school. So I
Yes.
just want to put that out there again. You were just like sliding in there like
Yeah.
hush hush, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How long did it take for you to kind of get that started?
So when my daughter was sixth grade, I kept talking about it. I was like, hey, I should definitely be an advisor of a club. And this is before, things flared up in the States with Black Lives Matter and everything,
Mm,
right? And now we have very strong groups at the high school level. We have a Black student union, we have a Latino student union, we have Pacific AAPI. Usually we get come together,
mm,
and I wanted to be so noble this year because COVID hit and I couldn't do a club, but this year I was like, I need to, and I still feel this way. I want to represent both sides. Yes, May is kind of and there's arguments of having that separate in the future, but
mm,
having Asian Pacific Islander Month in May in the US and celebrating for a month is great. But I wanted to really honor the Asian side, so I had an Asian Culture Club on Tuesdays and a Pacific Islander Culture Club on Thursdays. And what I found was the Asian Culture Club brought in a certain group of kids, and then the Pacific Islander Club, which was a lot smaller because we have like two Samoan kids, brother and sister, who they're awesome. One of them's off to high school, so I have his sister left, um, and then one Hawaiian kid. And I know there are other Hawaiian kids and other Chamorro kids and Filipino. So I usually will quietly go, "You want to come to our Asian club?" Or "You want to come to the Pacific Islander Club?" But then it became a thing where the kids from the Asian club liked it, so they started just coming on Thursdays. And
mm,
then I've had Black students start coming to both. And then they became brave. There's like three regular students who are Black, and they said, "We really want our own student union next year. What can we do?" I said, "Name the one teacher you would approach to be an advisor besides me." And that was very tough for them. They know of one teacher that they could approach. They're like, that guy I've seen. And I said, "You're always welcome to," because I've already approached him. I told him, I
mm,
was like, "I approached him." But teachers are so burnt out that he says, "Maybe I'll be a co-advisor." He said, "Great." So it kind of falls on not just my shoulders, but I'd like someone to take the helm for all these groups. But next year we voted to have it together, so we will have
mm.
one Tuesday where it's the API student union, and a lot of these sixth graders, because it was mostly sixth graders, um, are really excited to put on a second annual fair, which we did the first one in May, and it was great. It was very cute. We all wore island print shirts, and it was basically my husband's old shirts. And I went to Goodwill and all the thrift stores, and I just started purchasing all the island prints. Someone goes, "Are you Hawaiian?" Immediately, they're like, "Are you Hawaiian because you're buying all
Mm.
that?" No. But I do appreciate island print shirts for a fair. So I love that it's a core group of about 25 kids. And
Mm,
we definitely teach respect there, and we talk about how it's cultural to start cleaning up and helping, because the one Samoan kid, he would watch the time. He was like Big Brother, and he'd be like, "Okay, 5 minutes until the end," and you'd see him get up, not being told, and start cleaning up, snack trash, kind of directing the little ones to go pick that up, pick that up. And they're like, "He scares me." I'm like, "He's being himself right now.
mm,
He's teaching you something. He's sharing something of his culture with you. So you got to respect your elders."
mm. While we're on this, earlier you mentioned about some of the struggles you had in terms of your identity, and I wonder in your classroom, or with your students, like, do you have these conversations about, the importance of their the different
Yeah.
layers to the identity, and how they cope with that?
Yeah. A lot of times, so when we have a good mix of students, but we still are the minority because we have that
Mm,
data. And I always get curious about, like, oh, we're only 1.4, like Civic Honors are only 1.4% in this district. we have our ears perked to recognize other Pacific Islanders. And I've seen like families like that family looks like they're from Micronesia because I can identify
Mm.
within our chain. I'm like, so I would often approach those kids or the mom or the dad and say, "Are you guys from Chuuk, Ponte, Palau?" I named the islands, and it's something like they are not expecting to be recognized here in Marysville, Washington,
Mm.
as that. But I think it's important to pause and talk about that with them. My husband also mentioned, she's like, what's the PC way, I guess, to ask someone what their ethnicity is? Is it wrong to innately ask, well, what are you? Yeah, it's sometimes it depends on the person, but there are kids when I see their last name, especially if I know, hey, that's Hawaiian or that's
Mm.
Samoan or that's Palauan, I will just quietly ask them, so are you from, Hawaii or whatever I think, or I'll ask them, they go, yeah, my grandmother's this, and I let them share what they want to
Mm.
share. Especially when I was a librarian for 2 years. And one kid came in and he had a totally Hawaiian name. I said, so are you from Hawaii? And he's like, I don't know. That was his immediate
Mm.
response. I said, excuse me. Then I turned into a Pacific Islander. I was like, you better find out from your mother. You come back and you tell me what island you're from. And so he
Mm.
did. And so I thought, I think a lot of times we cloak ourselves, especially when we're living in, good old town, wherever in the States. And case in point, I went and got Starbucks this morning and a truck drove up and they had the Guam flag hanging from their rearview mirror. She was right next to me and he was coming in to get coffee. And I was like, do I stay half a day? Do I want to get into a conversation? Because it'll turn into, well, where are you from? What village are you
Mm.
from? Who's
Yeah.
your grandmother? Who's your uncle? Do you know this family? So I was just quiet. I thought maybe I don't recognize them.
Mm.
So I'll just hold that conversation. But identifying kids, even if, and on their school data, you can look up their address and stuff if you need to communicate with families. They have their ethnicity, their
Mm.
race identified. So when I'm curious and I want to make a connection with the kid, I will look. Oh, you're this, this, and this, right? So people have proposed a culture club, and I thought, yeah, that would be helpful. But I really am into celebrating the different variety we have.
Mm.
We had a spirit day where it was culture day, and that was a discussion with even staff members. Oh, I don't know what culture. I'm just white. I don't know what my culture is. So well, America, you can wear a flag. Do you have European descent that you know of that you celebrated? Well, I know my grandmother's from Germany. So we had
Mm.
kids that took the time to draw a flag on a white shirt, gave them a candy. I'm like, you were
Mm.
celebrating Spirit Day. And then you have the discussion on cultural appropriation, which we've had to clarify. So we got to be very careful of not calling it Hawaiian shirt day. And I've had
Mm.
to direct staff like, yeah, let's not do that. Let's just call it island prints. Let's just call it tropical. But there's still a lot to learn, and sometimes people don't know what they don't know. But I think also when you want to educate people, you don't attack them because that just makes them angry and not wanting to. I think we should
Mm.
always open to conversation and maybe explain why. Maybe we don't do this or this is how we celebrate. I had a coworker who used to refer to me as Oriental, and yeah, I see. So
The
exactly, and I I've gotten to the point where I don't get mad. I go into educator mode. So she was like, oh yeah, you're part Oriental, aren't you? And I paused and I said, okay, I want you to know that Oriental is used to describe the food and maybe the music and maybe the furniture, but I'm Asian.
Mm.
And if you don't know what specific Asian, it's Korea. Um,
Mm.
so, but that maintains the relationship. I'm still friends with her. I can still talk to her. She's not mad at me for correcting her. So even with our kids, we have to um, not like bite their heads off, so to speak. Just, oh, speak to them like they don't know better, and then just go, hey, this is why we don't say that.
Mm.
So it's a lot of work, but it has to be done. So
Yeah.
we don't say things that can be hurtful. sure.
I saw in your bio in the VA anthology that you're also passionate about diversity and equity
Yeah.
at your school. And I wondered, what does equity, I mean, you mentioned the equity sticks earlier, and, let's not,
Wow.
what does that look like? How do you implement that, or in your own classroom, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the immediate learning space. Obviously, colleagues is another level of,
Yeah.
that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But in terms of you and your learners, how do we see equity and diversity, or just the
Panning out.
celebration of identity in your
Um,
classes?
I think what was cool about this, at least our district is trying this school year to work more with equity. They actually
Mm.
hired an equity director
Wow.
who works with every school. And then I'm on what's called a BELT committee. It's called Building Equity Leadership Team. So it's never been done before. I've never been on a team that worried about, are we treating students equitable? Do we have enough things for our SPED community? Are we highlighting our LGBTQIA group?
Mm.
So that was, and you have to be voted on. Being one of the minorities, you, it's tough because you don't want to be the token person that
Right.
everyone turns to. Is that true? Is that true? What do you think? But two of us on the team are minorities, and then one, we have a good group who innately wants to be on that team. But with equity, I think having conversations with the students, making sure, even as educators, you can't always pick that same kid who, like Hermione in Harry Potter. You can't keep picking on Hermione. You have to make sure that Ron Weasley gets a chance to talk, and
Right.
you know, um, the kid who blew stuff up all the time. I forgot his name, but every kid has to have a chance to say something. Um, and when I see something done wrong, if someone's being mean, because there's so much rampant bullying, and they won't do it in front of me, but sometimes I'll hear from others, like, because they know I will be upset and address it. I heard someone call me this or call someone this in the hallway. All right, I'll check on that. I had to counsel two Asian students, on calling each other ching chong.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, why? Because they just don't know, and they're doing it because everyone else is doing it. I think it's funny. So if you are held back in my class, like everyone's coming, welcome, hello, have a seat, fill out your planner. But I go, hold on, wait for me at the door. They freak out because they know, oh, she needs to talk to someone. But it's, I think it's that tough love, a little bit of let me point let me point at what you shouldn't be doing, what you should do. So I said, instead of saying this, correct it. Okay. But the girl was like, well, he calls me that all the time. He says that too. I said, okay, I'll talk to him about that, but I don't want to ever hear that you use those terms again as a representative of the. So I put it on them. You are also a role model. You have to be. So that's tough. It's tough. It's easier to just kind of turn the other way. And I've had different educators tell me different things, like, don't worry about that kid, or if you see someone fall, you should just keep walking because otherwise it's your problem. And I thought, that's really weird. You should be running towards that situation to help that kid.
Mm.
So it's exhausting, but you have to have your ears perked. You have to read body language. If I see a kid moping and not their usual self, or even sometimes they're like, I'm not talking to that person anymore because they said something behind my back. So I've secretly wrote to the counselor, hey, I have these two BFFs fighting right now. So no education is going to happen. Can you pull them out and see what's
Mm.
up? They came back, and the two girls came back and they immediately hugged me and they said, thanks for letting us have class time to fix this. But everything was hunky dory after that. It was great. They were all fine. But equity is not easy.
Mm.
And in an ideal world, we would not need it. But the way I won't even talk about yesterday's Supreme Court thing. The way things are going,
Mm.
it's a lot. And I share things with my daughter and my son, just so that if there's things happening in the world or in the news, I just at least say, not to stress them more, but I want them to have an awareness of the world and to be prepared.
Hmm.
Coffee.
Do you think that you and your brother will collaborate again? I know you gave him a shout out, and you can
Yeah.
plug him all you want.
Yeah.
Throw it out there. I will also add it to the bio
Yeah.
and his information to your bio
Yes.
for the podcast. But yeah, do you see yourself?
We've talked about it many times, and he's already gone off and done some really cool stuff. Like, uh, there's an anthology that needed a kick. Do you remember Kickstarters? I think that's what they're called, where you can like fund something like I'm going to do this, and if you want to
Oh,
back,
right.
I think they're called Kickstarters. I could be getting the phrasing wrong, but a couple years ago, he's like, "Hey, I've been invited to." He loves comic books. He's like, "Stanley is our, one of our most favorite rest in peace people, Marvel and everything." But he was invited to write some kind of scary story, do the art, or collaborate. And I remember they said, if you pay us $100 for a Kickstarter for this dark anthology, we'll make you a comic book character. So I'm in two spots in that dark. Like, honey, I'm always like, honey, can I pay $200 towards this so I can have two characters? Yeah, I have to figure out where it is. It's there somewhere. I get it to you later. But I love that they took my photo, and I'm called Mrs. Taimanglo, but he does a lot of comic book stuff. I feel like he's going towards the graphic novel direction, and he's collaborated with a few friends. But yeah, there's definitely room to grow. I would probably tap him for Attitude 13 Volume 2 to do the art again. But again,
Nice.
he's a busy teacher, so I have to work within his schedule.
Man,
Yeah,
that's so cool. And in terms of like your writing, because you do contribute to other publications,
yeah,
and you haven't stopped writing. That's the thing we need to tell everyone. Like, even though
yeah.
your books were released like
A
10
while
years
ago.
ago, but you're
Yeah,
still writing ongoing. You also have a blog that occasionally you write for.
yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that, like these publications that you submit to. Do they reach out to you and then you?
Yeah, that's why I'm thankful for Lani and Sisilia, because Lani I met around the same time I was writing these books in San Diego, because I came across Lonnie Young's blog, and I was
Mm.
reading it, and we were both fangirls for Twilight, so I'm not embarrassed to say that.
Own it.
Yes, I own it, because when Twilight came out, I was already a mom. I was like, I had two little kids. I only knew about Twilight because I was tutoring the young lady across the street. And
Mm.
I would make her read and summarize. And she goes, "Can I pick the book?" I go, "What book do you want?" She goes, "Twilight." I go, "Whatever." I didn't even vet it. I just let her read and then write about it.
Right.
And then it was on sale at Walmart, the Twilight movie. So my daughter was like newborn, and I watched it one night. I was just watching the DVD, and then I watched it 3 times the next day, and then I watched it every night for like almost 2 weeks. And my mom goes, "What's your problem? Why is this movie on again?" And then I go, "I really like this movie. Let me check out the books." And that's sometimes how it happens, where I check out the book because there's a show. Like, I'm really pressed. I love Jenny Han, by the way,
Mm.
to all the boys I've loved before,
Mm.
because she's Korean. Whenever I see, oh, there's a Korean author who's made it, like getting these movie deals, um, I love her series. And where was I going with this? So her new one is out, The Summer I Turned Pretty. So I refuse to watch it right now because I need to read the books first, because I
Mm.
need that background information. But so I didn't meet Lonnie, but we were early supporters of each other's stuff. And when I saw her blog and I was reading it, and she was a mom, she loved Twilight, she's Samoan, I go, she's like me, but Samoan. And so I forgot who reached out first. And I just remember we were emailing each other for a while, and we just laughed at how very similar we are. And like when I got my black belt, I did something on Facebook because we're Facebook friends. She like re-shared it, my picture breaking boards, and I go, why are you re-sharing my taekwondo pictures on this writer page? But it was nice to have that support. She goes, I'm a low-key stalker or whatever she called
Mm.
herself. But when she reached out for Va, I was just like, what, you want it in a week and a half? What? And I had already had something like the bones of the story that's in there written. And that's kind of the push I need. I'm kind of a procrastinator. You don't give me a due date, I'll let it sit.
Mm.
And I'm the worst person for that myself. Like someone external to me has to give me a due date. So like if someone said, we need Attitude 13 by December or something, then I'd be like, got it. But if it's for myself, I tend to, because life gets in the way. And
Mm.
so I'm very thankful for Lani and pushing me for that because other than that, it's just storyboard is a big University of Guam compilation that I have contributed to on and off. But like that, sometimes I miss deadlines because I'm like, I don't want to create a story that doesn't have any, I guess, soul.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want it to be something that I just make on the fly because someone wants it. It has to be something that's already been brewing. So like that's why I'm excited about their middle grade book.
Yes.
So I'm like, I need to hop on that. So
Yes.
they're like, how's it going? Mine's half baked. I have like another 1,000 words to go.
Wow.
So I'm kind of excited, and I kind of tested the storyline with my daughter, and she seems to approve, and she's within that age group. So we'll see.
I'm excited for you. Yeah, I know that they've got that. I think I've been posting and like sharing that, and I think it's great. Like I'm excited for you. I'm excited for anyone who is submitting. And when Sisilia, she also came on the show on behalf of her and Lani, and it was awesome just to talk to her. And you know how that, like, what really got me was obviously the deadline. She was like, yeah, deadlines are super short, but just that they actively give feedback, like she was just saying, even that was, I mean, they're awesome. Shout out to Sisilia and to Lani. If you don't have your copy of this, please go get it. You can get it on ebook as well. Buy it on ebook. Check them out. Tatou Publishing, doing amazing things. Stories by women of the Moana. I mean, there are so many authors that I have now connected to in here that I didn't even know existed before. So as always, got a shout out. And you mentioned Lani, her blog. That's actually how I came across, like maybe 3-4 years ago. That's how I think that's how I learned about your books. I think that's how I learned about other authors. I was like, oh my God, there's more. There are more of you out there.
Yeah.
So
and that's why I'm grateful. Like Lani is like, I don't know, she's like a power lifter of writing. And I mean, she's like a role model. So I love that I can be connected with her in that way. And definitely she doesn't like they both work to bring people up and to bring them to the light, which is important because a lot of us, like, oh, my writing's not good enough, or I don't know if this is good. So when I gave them my one story and when they responded, it was a lot more. I tend to be a critic of myself. So, oh, they're going to say no, they're going to slash it, but they were very kind and, uplifting. And so I think we need more of that, especially with a book industry that is not very open and to Indigenous writers. And Lahua Parker, we were on that first people's workshop. It was a couple of days ago, and I didn't realize it was going to be on a Zoom in front of many people. And Cecilia was on there. I don't know if you got to watch that.
No, I didn't.
Okay. So I thought it was just going to be a book talk with a bunch of us, but I'm like, wait, I'm on, and I was just like, I just took a nap because and so I had all my hair like this, and I was like, and we were all like secretly writing, like, what is this? How come we look all like a hot mess? So I was like, okay, what is this? I didn't know what I had signed up for until until we opened up, and I go, there's a stage and there's like an audience. Holy cow.
Wow.
So that was really cool because it highlighted the book, and so sometimes you gotta make yourself uncomfortable and get out there.
Mm.
And yeah, and we just need more opportunities. I used to do a lot of Guam festivals and fairs when I lived in San Diego. I'm not sure if you're familiar with PIFA, Pacific Islanders Festival in San Diego. It's like
Mm.
Comic-Con for Pacific Islanders. It's
Wow.
like, yeah, it's on a beach every year, 200,000 people,
Wow.
barbecue, stage, dancing, vendors. It's huge. So if you Google it on YouTube, Pacific Islander Fest PIFA, San Diego, you will see how massive it can be. And, that's where I've networked a lot. I used to sell my books like at a little table and buy my book and meet
Mm.
people. So a lot of that opportunity once I moved to Washington kind of dried up. But yeah, we've got the internet. So
Yeah, we got the internet.
yeah,
That's why I was excited when you said you were going to do your. I mean, I know you've got your personal Instagram, but I was excited when you said you're going to do an author
yeah,
page because, it's. I love to promote, like I love to share that kind of
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
because it's like I just want people to know that we have these
yeah,
amazing writers and
yeah.
authors who sometimes are just doing it out of their mostly out of your own pockets,
It's
right?
like I'm a
And so
garage band. I'm a garage band that doesn't want to be, discovered. So
and yeah,
yeah,
I remember Cecilia mentioning, that there's so many writers and she's been pushing them. Go on, start a page. You don't have to
yeah,
like put everything on there, but just something to get readers
yes,
curious and
yeah,
excited. And yeah, it's
for sure.
awesome.
And yeah, and sometimes like that's how like I haven't blogged in a while. The last thing was
Mm,
about people making stickers of this book cover, and I thought you're gonna make you're not gonna ask the artist permission. So
yeah.
this has been an ongoing. Somebody has this tattooed on them, on their leg, which is great. And my brother was flattered, but it's
Yeah.
exactly this, and it was interesting. So that was the last
Mm,
blog. But I've had people. I guess if you Google Guam writer or something, that has directed Wing Luke Museum in Seattle. They
mm,
found me through that. So this researcher says, I know you are Pacific Islander and Korean. Do you want to sell
mm,
your books at our museum? And I thought, really? So that's how they found me through that. And I've maintained that relationship. So on occasion, if they have like an author thing, I get to sit with my books. I've done it once, but it's more me buying everyone else's book. So it's I think writing and sharing your thoughts, it can be a scary thing, but
mm.
it's important. Yeah.
You've keep mentioning taekwondo. You are a third Dan black belt in taekwondo. Um
Yes.
and you kind of talked a little bit about it at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the next step? Because isn't there like
There's
are you
nine,
about to like
nine levels.
be top dog? Like
I think by the time I think I can fly and do a 360 kick, I will be 60 or 70.
wow.
So when I got married, I was Dombo, which is one level. It's a half black and red. So I was 29, 30 when I got married, and I just quit.
Mm,
So I've been doing it since I was 16 because it took me 4 years of watching my brothers get their belt, and then one of them saying I'm done and the other one continuing. Then I said, okay, Dad, I think I'm ready. So I was 16 when I started,
mm,
and I loved it. I really did love it. And then I kept going back and forth. And then when I had my kids, of course, I stopped. But then I told myself, I said, I need to get my black belt before I'm 50 to honor my mother,
mm,
because that's something my dad really pressed, like Korean heritage wise. So when my son joined at the age of like 7 or 8, and they go, parents are free for 2 months. I went, and I was out of shape. So I go, I have this old belt, and I can find my old master in gosh, where is he? He moved out of Guam. So I found him on Facebook. Can you resend my certificate to prove that I trained under you? And my current master was like, I don't need that. So I went back at the age of, I don't know, 45 or something. And then 40 something, I was in my 40s, and it was painful to go back, but I just kept going, and my kids have quit, and I said, well, mom's still going. I only go twice a week, but it is painful. But if I don't do that, then I feel like I'm not going to exercise ever. So it's been good, and it's been keeping me moving, and it's a source of pride, I think, for my mom for sure. But if I hit fourth dan, then I get to be called Master Taimanglo.
Oh, do it!
So,
Do
yeah,
it! I want to call you the master.
the master. Yes. So that'll take another 4 years because you only test once a year. So I will definitely be in my 50s, but at least I surpassed what I said I would do by the time I was 50. So I'm excited.
You're awesome. You are so awesome.
Yeah.
When you're not wearing your teacher hat, when you take that off, when you're not training, when you're not writing, what other things do you enjoy doing? Outside of family time.
I mean, it's like my problem with I love reading and writing, and I collect old typewriters. I don't know if you see that little nugget
Ooh.
there. I have a problem collecting typewriters because I learned on an old school typewriter in high school. And I'm a big Funko Pop fan, and it doesn't help that Funko Pop Everett is down the street. I'm going tomorrow. So I love Funko Pops and I love Comic Cons. I told my children, I was like, when you're old enough, I'm just gonna make sure I have money to travel to every kind of Comic Con there is, and attend all those things because I love Wonder Woman and I love Marvel for sure. And it's a source of pride that I have me and Stanley's picture in my classroom. And it's not that big, but when the kids go and look at the collage of photos I have, because I have a picture with Jack Black from when I ran into him at LA. So I have all these little photos, right, of Cobra Kai guys and stuff. Things you pay $80 to take a picture with celebrities at cons. So when the kids go, is that Stan Lee? And right. That's what I would do. I would travel and go to cons. I would probably be in a movie theater. I love movies. I would probably just be at a movie theater watching a show. I love karaoke, so it would be a dream to have I like private rooms. In Guam, they used to have a place called Heaven, but it was basically an old motel, and you and your friends could just have one room, so no other person could be subjected to your singing, and you could just order food and sing with your friends and be yourself. So that would be cool to do too.
Come to Japan. Come to Japan. Let's get a karaoke.
Yes, for sure. That's what Heaven was owned by a little Japanese man. And it was because he would always come in and check on us and give us extra food and all that. So he was very sweet. So yeah. Karaoke, Comic Cons. I might want to join a Kung Fu or MMA class. Stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Future aspirations, like goals that you have yet to achieve, as an author, as a writer, as a teacher, as an educator. Do you have any in mind, or is it?
I have a computer and some printouts full of first drafts of novels, and I find myself passionate about young adult YA. Love them. That's why I love Jenny Han. I love David Yoon is another Korean author that I just buy the books. Like I'm not necessarily reading them, but I'm like, okay, I'm buying it, put it on my shelf. If I'm in the mood, I'll read it. Crying in H Mart, I have that book. I'm nibbling. So I'm nibbling my way through a lot of stuff. But I remember when John Green came out and wrote some books, and I'm like, I'm very into 80s movies like gosh, I can't even think of his name. The Breakfast Club guy. John Hughes. I can't even remember it off the top of my head. But Pretty in Pink, of those types of unlikely romances, I tend to favor those types of stories a lot. And so I have a lot of first drafts because when I moved to Washington 10 years ago, there's a November competition here that's called, and it's nationwide. I guess it's worldwide. It's called NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. And they challenge you. That's why I always need challenges and deadlines. They challenge you for the month of November to write 50,000 words. of a first draft, and you have to upload it, improve it, have a daily count. You can get a T-shirt at the end. So I did that like for 5 years straight. So I have all these first drafts that I love. I dumped it out, and it's just like this heaping mess of love that needs editing. So those are some future goals, because I have, of the five, I think all of them are YA. And I did write, and I don't know if it's cool, but I wrote from the perspective of a young teenage boy for one of that. And I don't know if I got it right. You know, we have people like Nicholas Sparks, who oftentimes writes from a female perspective, a romance book, and I'm like The Notebook and A Walk to Remember, and I'm like, I really want to take it from a viewpoint of a young teenage boy who's in love. Let me try that on the side. So we'll see. I don't know if that's PC anymore, but that's the goal, to take those rough drafts and do something meaningful with it.
And you mentioned librarian dream job. So you're in the classroom now. Are you
Yes.
also part-time teacher librarian or
No.
no?
So they hired me. I was trying to just basically go where my kids are, because when I have my teaching certificate for English, or well, secondary English, and I only taught high school in Guam, which was my jam. I stayed away from middle school because it's a, I don't know, I guess a very I can't think of the word right now, but it's volatile in middle school. You get all kinds of kids, the sweet kids who still wear light up shoes, and then the kids who just want to punch you in the face. So I never liked that. And so high school, they're a little more mellow, and I could just say, sit down, do your work. You know, you're not in middle school anymore. But so when they hired me on, it was for half day librarian, and I didn't have to be an actual librarian. Of course, the former librarian came to grill me and said, so I hear you're the new librarian. I was like, yeah, I am. Do you have a library science, library media degree? And I said, no, I don't. But I love books, and I'm ELA, I can read. But I loved being in the library for 2 years. And then my second year, my principal realized, oh, yeah, you are a teacher, right? Oh, yeah, you can sub too. So that was not good. So I was kind of bounced around. But then they gave me a classroom, ELA class and an elective. And I thought, I can do this. I can go back into the class. So because of COVID, they canceled for money purposes. There was no librarian. And they used the library as a cafeteria, which cried. Because I went in there, I was like, I need to get some books that are API, and everything was sticky or out of place. And I was like, oh my gosh. But they opened up a new position for a half day again. That's the problem. It's like, why are you only doing half days? Are we that not, our librarians not needed? I wish they would just get a full-fledged librarian. But he offered it to me and said, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to be with the kids. That's where the most good is. But good luck finding a half-day librarian. But it was nice to have that dream, to say that I was the school librarian for 2 years. I had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, man. And then book recommendations. What books have you been reading? Or do you want to plug some books?
Well, like I said, Jenny Han and David Yoon are like currently on the forefront. If that's the book I'm going to read this summer, those are the ones that are on my top of my list. And Crying in H Mart, because I started it and then I set it down and I just got crazy with work. But the book that I did finish, because they were pushing equity a lot with teachers, like kind of making sure you are aware. I read All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson, and that was
I
very
read that.
Yeah. So that was for my book study, and I thought, and one of my friend's coworkers recommended it to me, and loaned me the book, and I said, okay, I want to get this perspective. So that was a really good book that I totally finished, because again, it was partially for having something due, but that was insightful. And then I got How Not to Be a Racist, or How to Be an Anti-Racist, like
Ibram Kendi's book.
Yeah, I picked that up, and I'd like to get that done this summer. So
that I don't know if you're into audiobooks. It's just that, like, with teaching, when it gets super busy, like I commute and listen to audiobooks. And so Yeah, I've listened to both of those. I mean, I've
Yeah.
read and listened
Yeah.
to
And listens.
the
Yeah.
audio,
Yeah.
especially if if books are if it's narrated by the author.
I
Like
love those. Yeah.
I tend to kind of go for those types of books, like memoirs and whatnot, just because I've said this before on here. Like I feel like hearing the author, it just that whole connection to the
Hmm.
words and hearing that it's just a whole nother level of like
For
intimate,
sure.
right? You can really hear the emotions
Yep.
through the words that are being shared. So yeah.
Absolutely. I hear you. And then you meant I'm surprised I didn't mention, but Amy Tan is one of my like all time here at Joy Luck
Mm.
Club. That you saw my little thing on Russell Wong.
Yeah, I
I
was
have to
like,
plug Russell Wong.
I was
I was
like,
like,
look
do you
at
like
her
it?
go.
Yeah. And so my daughter's like, so who's this Russell Wong guy? And I go, Google it. She goes, oh, okay, he's an actor. It's like that was my 90s, watching The Vanishing Sun and seeing. I didn't like him on Joy Luck Club because he was a villain, but
Mm,
it was a big deal because I just started the the, the Instagram, post, and I went and deliberately liked everyone I liked on my
yeah.
personal accounts. Like, let me go for a good, all these writers, these Asian actors. So I thought, oh, that's so cool. But Amy Tan, I got to see her about a month or two ago up in Bellingham. She was just sitting on stage and
Mm,
talking about her books. So like she's another, like, with her and like Stephen King, like those are
mm,
some of the authors that like I put up there with like mythical creatures because I do love them. I love the way they write. I love that Amy Tan just was herself and wrote
mm,
the Chinese perspective. So
yeah.
to see her and have a picture with her was important. Yeah.
Have you read Pachinko by Min Jin Lee?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I recommend that. I recommend that.
Feel free to always, anytime you think of something, you can send it to messages to me. I
I
appreciate it. I
recommend
have
that.
friends who do that. Yeah.
I've just
Cool.
started watching like because they released like a series on Apple
Okay.
and it's been like it's
I'm writing
been on
it
my
down.
watch list for a long time. But
Yeah.
then, I was chatting with my friend and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to watch this. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I want to watch this because like sometimes I will read a book and I'm totally like, oh, I'm so hooked into this book, and then I hear not so great things about,
Yeah.
the film. So there've been other books that I've read where I would just refuse to watch the film, but I've just started the series and I'm just kind of like, oh, should I
Yeah.
have? No, like,
So I think if we, and I've had to be very careful of those because I love Harry Potter. I loved, and then the films I love too. Yes,
mm,
Hunger Games. I love the books, and some of my kids are like. There's one boy who's like, I bought all those books because I do silent reading in my classroom now. And he
mm,
started with Hunger Games, and he wouldn't stop. I'm like, hey, time's up. Go ahead and put your book away. And he's like, and he goes, can I take this home? And I go, yeah. He goes, this is the first book in a long time. It's like, take it home.
mm,
But like making sure you understand that like the book is one type of beast and then
mm,
the show. Hollywood, and I asked that of Amy Tan. I was like, would you ever revisit Toilet Club? Or if Netflix said, hey, we want to do now a
right.
series, like they do all the time. She goes, it's been proposed before. She really does not like Hollywood. She's like,
Mm.
it's very tough. She had a good time with that movie, but she goes, Hollywood tends to do what they want.
Yeah,
Adam
they
exposed me
ruined
here.
some stuff, man. I'm just
They
like,
did,
why?
yeah.
Why would you do that? Like,
Because you
why?
probably have a few people making those decisions, and unless you get the author's hands on it,
Mm,
it's never going to be quite the same version. So I'll check that out. I wrote it down, Pachinko. But
awesome.
yeah.
If a book was written about you, what would it be called?
Ugh. The awkward princess. I don't
The
know.
awkward,
I
the
don't
awkward
know.
princess.
Uh, and that's why I like Guam, maybe just Guam Goddess in training because I
Ground
never,
God, yeah.
yeah, never done. Just always figuring it out. Because we're never done evolving. I don't think. I don't think you should
Mm,
ever be satisfied.
mm.
Yeah.
Man, Tanya, man, I honestly can't believe that we're like chatting. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm so grateful
Yeah.
um that I know what it feels like, as an educator when you finish school and it's just exhausted. you're just
Yeah.
like you're kind of still running, like on that
Yes.
same like you're trying to slow everything down. And so I really just want to say thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming through today and just sharing a bit of you. I know we've talked about so many things today, and I'm so sure that your stories and your journey that you've shared will resonate with viewers and listeners alike. So I
Yeah.
really just want to take this chance to say that you are awesome. You
Thank
are
you.
amazing, and I love that you're up in your social media game. Yes, that's the teacher side of you coming through. I know it is.
I
Such a
gotta get it.
go-getter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm excited and looking forward to what's coming next for
Thank you.
you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, it's summer break. Please enjoy your break with your
Yeah.
family. Get
Thank
plenty
you.
of rest. Yeah, but
You'll see
stay
a lot of
on
posts
being
from
amazing.
Guam for sure. I'll be posting a lot of stuff. I'll probably hit up some bookstores and like take pictures of tons of. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of Guam as well, so that's
Mm.
exciting. I'll probably have to mail books home to myself. Yeah.
And so, just to end the show, I like to ask guests just some words of encouragement. You could be the author or the teacher. Just, I guess, for anyone who perhaps is struggling with reading or even just wanting to get into writing, what words of encouragement would you offer them?
I think practice is good. Um, choosing words that are different is important. And then writing from your experience, using that as a launching pad is the most genuine way to go. Like, um, think of yourself, think of maybe a world you want. I love the creating world. So the kids who love Minecraft, writing is basically the same thing.
Right.
So just try it because you don't know. I was late in the game. I think I was 19 when I said, I'm going to write a book. So I think practice and not having that fear that you're like, I still kind of innately have the judgment, having people judge my stuff. Just practice writing, and if it hits somebody, then it's effective, and you just don't know until it's out there. And there's something about seeing your name on print that's equivalent to, I guess, you are seeing it in life. So even if it was a newspaper editorial, I loved having my byline, and I think if it's for you, you should go for it.